I'm going to get right into it because we got a little bit of ground to cover. Um, Let me turn this down. Okay, we're going to continue with our conversation from chapter 10, where we're talking about interviewing. Right. So yesterday we learned that there were going to be three different types of interviews: a screening interview, a structured interview, an unstructured interview. And we talked about, where it's going to be. It could be on site, it could be remote. Regardless of if it's on site or if it's remote, I know this doesn't need to be said, but I'm going to say it. Please make sure you arrive on time, my friends. Last first impression is a lasting impression. I know it's sad but true. I've interviewed so many people in the past, and the ones that stand out to me are not the ones I hired. I don't even think I remember their interview. I remember the ones that went awry, the ones that were really bad. Um, I remember interviewing a professor, and this was a big time professor from UCF. Um, but he got lost. And when he showed up to the interview, he was sweating, he was hot, he it was hard for him to get his bearings. It was a nightmare. And it was a panel interview. So there was more than one of us, right? So even if I, overlooked, you know, how he showed up, some of the other ones didn't overlook it. And my boss was in the room and she did not overlook it, right? She was like, I couldn't understand him and he was sweating and we had to get him water and all kinds of craziness, right? So you don't want that drama, my friends. Please show up on time. It's so important to know where you're going. Be early. If possible, you know that there's traffic, weather, all kinds of stuff. Like you just don't want to be that person showing up late and now people are going to have that idea of you. Make sure you know if there are parking passes that are needed, if you have to park in a garage, if you're going to need to go through security, all those different things could happen. This is something else you could ask the screener. We talked about different questions that you could ask the screener. This is one of them. Do I need to go through security? Is there going to be, a garage I have to go through? And sometimes if you have to park at a garage, that could take time. We'll continue to talk about other things to ask the screener as we go along. So, hopefully, like I said, most of you will be doing in person interviews, but like I said, there could be an instance where you have to meet someone else and it could be a virtual interview. Make sure everything works, guys. You guys are already on Microsoft Office if you're using, in this class because that's what we use. But make sure you know how to use Google Meet and some of the other ones as well. And make sure that you ask the HR person that's doing the screening what platform they're using if it is going to be a virtual interview, right? A lot of times people will say, "Oh, I'll send you the Zoom link," and it ends up being a Microsoft Office Teams link, right? So just make sure you know um, what type it will be. Most of you won't have a telephone interview, but you don't know, right? You could have a telephone interview. I don't like telephone interviews. I think they're the hardest to showcase your personality. But if it is, you know, a situation where you have to have one, just like I said, with even with the virtual interview, sometimes you have to amplify your personality a little bit because you do tend to fall flat via virtual interviews because you're talking about just what a one-dimensional device. People don't get to feel your energy. And so if you already have a very subdued personality, you fall really flat. You ever been on a virtual meeting and some people look like they're disinterested or half dead, and that's just their face and they're pretty happy, but that's just their face. Like, so imagine that, and imagine that face at an interview. And what do you think the interviewer is thinking? They're probably thinking, okay, this person doesn't even look like they're happy to be here. So you have to be a little bit more animated when you are on the virtual. When you are on the phone, you just have to really enunciate yourself, show excitement in your voice because you want the people to know that you're, happy to be interviewing with them and hopefully, have an opportunity to work with them. But, I don't really wish telephone interviews on anyone because it could be very difficult to really, impress people over the phone. But just know you could have it. All right. So let's get into these questions, right? Typically, interview questions fall within three categories: general information questions, behavioral type questions, and stress related questions. So, when it comes to the general information questions, what are we talking about? These are the questions that they you'll hear them say stuff like, "Oh, tell me a little bit about yourself. Walk me through your resume." And we all hate that because we're all thinking to ourselves, like, what is it that they really want to know? Well, let me just tell you, my friends, what they really want to know is, why are you here? Why do you want to work for this company, right? Most times they won't come right out and ask you that, but that's what they really want to know. Here is how you answer these general information questions. You need to weave a story that ends up at their company. What do I mean by that? Especially if you don't have the background and you're applying for an electrician job for the first time. You want to tell a story, and it needs to begin with why you're interested in electrical work in the first place. Something caused you to be interested in being an electrician, right? Clearly, this is, most of you, is not your first job, so you've done other things in the past. But at some point, you were interested. Maybe you had a uncle that had a construction company. Maybe your father was in it. Maybe, I don't know, you were talking to your best friend and he convinced you to do it. So whatever that is, what you want to do, you want to start out with, you know what? Let's say you had a interest in it because your uncle had a business. Start there. You can say, you know what? I was always interested in electrical, but I didn't get started in it. I had an uncle; he used to do it. I used to go to his shop sometimes. Whatever your story is, if it's true, right? Whatever interested you in it, but you just didn't get into it. When I started working, I went into customer service because of what? Because I was going to school, or whatever the reason is, because I moved, whatever your reason was for going to customer service. I liked it, but I always was still thinking about, electrical, if it's true, whatever your true story is about electrical and would draw your interest. I decided, because regardless of what you did, if you worked in customer service, talk a little bit about that. I worked in customer service. Then let's say you went on to be a bus driver. I started working as a bus driver, but something really always was drawing me to be an electrician. Then jump into why you started at Southern Tech. I decided to go back to school, right? Don't spend too much time on your resume stuff because it's not really relevant. I decided to go back to school to become an electrician. Now talk about their company specifically, because they really just want to know, why them, right? As I was doing my research about what company I wanted to work at, I really wanted to focus on a company that did a lot of residential work, right? I really love XYZ about you guys, because whatever your reason is, and that's why I decided to come here. Even if it's a situation where your friend was in it, still start the conversation out with, when I started out in customer service and I did that for a little while, then I went to go work as a bus driver. I had a friend that was in electrical. He always talked about it. I was always interested in it, and so I decided to go back to school and do it, then move into why you moved into their company. That's all you need to do. 3 minutes, in and out, right? They've already read your resume, right? So they already have kind of seen it. They just want to hear the story. But what they really want to know is, why are you here? And that's how you tell that story. If you have anything on your resume that has anything to do with electrical, fine, weave that into the story, but you don't need to spend a lot of time on it, right? If you looked on the job description and it talked about you'll be doing some customer service work, dig into the customer service work a little bit. Oh, I really like customers, play up those trigger words, but get out of there quick and just get to why you are applying to work with them, and let that be how you answer that question. That's all they really want to know is, do you really want to work here? And so you just want to tell a quick little story of why you ended up at their company and why you really want to work there. That's it. That's all they want to know. Does that make sense? Especially for those of us, this is our first electrical job, so clearly they just want to know why are you choosing them. That's all you have to do. Now, when it comes to the behavioral questions, this is where it's going to be important for you to have a little notepad when you interview. I really encourage you guys to do that because people they ask a lot of questions, and I know for many of us we're like, man, I wish I would have known they were going to ask those types of questions. Well, let me demystify it for you. There are two basic types of questions that they ask. One are past tense questions. We call those behavioral questions. And the other are stress related questions. We call those hypothetical questions, and they have to do specifically with their company. So the first set of questions are behavioral questions. And you'll know it's a behavioral based question because it'll start with tell me about a time when or describe to me a time when. Now, most of these types of questions won't have anything to do with the job because you've never worked there. So, most times it's going to have to do with, watch this, soft skills. Isn't that funny how the job description always puts the hard skills at the top, but when you get into the interview, they really want to know about you. So a lot of those questions are soft skills related. It's going to fall within one of three categories. Tell me about a time when you had to deal with a customer, tell me about a time when you had to deal with a coworker, or tell me about a time where you had to deal with a supervisor. And you already know it's going to be some type of issue, some type of problem, and what did you do to solve it? If it is a customer, 9 times out of 10, the customer is not happy. Well, whatever the situation is, they want to know how did you solve the issue. If it is a coworker, it's going to be a non-performing coworker. How did you help that coworker to get better or do whatever, and you guys still got the job done? If it's a supervisor, it's going to be your supervisor is giving you too much to do, and for some reason you need to go and ask clarifying questions or whatever it is you need to do to get the work done. What do they want to see? If it's a customer, they want to see that you can problem solve and you can help the customer. If it's a coworker, they want to see you know how to be a team player. If it's a boss, they want to know if you can recommend solutions. So, what you want to do with your notepad, you want to think, I know they're probably going to ask me. I don't know which one they're going to ask, but let me think about a time where I had to help a customer. And I put a little cheat sheet on my paper. I may put like customer, and I'll put like Sarah because I remember that time I had to help Sarah. And then I may put coworker, I may put Larry. I know who Larry is. They don't know. And that time I had to help Larry. Maybe Larry was having a hard time doing the job and you had to train him after work and then he got it. And then I may put Sam if it's my boss. And that time Sam had given you two different projects and he forgot he gave you a project. So you went to Sam and you offered him up a solution on how to get the both of those projects done at the same time. Whatever your story is, just try to have three different little scenarios. So when they ask, you won't be so blindsided. Like you don't know exactly what they're going to ask, but you know it's going to have to do with some customer needs help, some coworker needs help, or you need to help your boss. And I put that as a little cheat sheet. Now, when it comes to stress related questions, this is where you really need to read the job description because they're still going to ask one of those three questions, or they may ask two of the three to deal with a customer, a coworker, or a boss. But this time, they're going to put you in a scenario at their company, and that's why you really want to know that job description. You want to know what that job is. So if that job is working on a team project, maybe you're working at Lennar Homes or something like that, or if you're residential and you guys are like going and doing residential work, maybe you're working for, the electrical company, right? Um, you need to think about, okay, what types of issues could I have working for this company? If I work for Duke Energy, what type of issues could I have? Maybe you'll end up working at Disney, who knows? And you're working, in their maintenance. What type of issues would I have? And then you need to think through, okay, what type of will I be dealing with a customer? What type of, I don't know exactly, but let me, have an example where maybe if they say to me, because it's going to be hypothetical, tell me what would you do if um, we had you working with a client if you're at Lennar and we had a deadline and we were going to miss the deadline. They may ask you something weird like that. What do they want to know? They want to know, do you know how to problem solve and get it done? Or if you had an irate customer, do you know how to not allow that person's attitude to bother you and still try to offer up solutions and get it done? It's still going to be one of those three scenarios, but it's going to be based in their environment. So again, you may not have the exact answer, but at least you won't be blindsided by what scenario they can put you in, right? So they're not going to ask you a crazy, crazy scenario that has nothing to do with them. They're going to ask it in terms of their work and specifically the job description that you'll have. Does that make sense, guys? Any questions on that? There are tons of interview questions that you can look up online. Like if you want to look up types of interview questions that they ask electricians, there's so many out there. You can Google them. Types of behavioral questions, types of hypothetical questions, and let me just tell you a little hint. A lot of times they Google the questions themselves. Chat GPT, Google Gemini, any of those AI systems, they're really good. If you say, hey, can you generate for me some electrical interview questions and how I should answer them? Like, don't be afraid to use technology when it comes to that. All right? That should help you. Now, there are some questions they should never ask. And if they do ask, you do not have to answer because these questions are illegal. People have been sued from interview questions, by people that never even worked for them. Trust me, I've seen it. Um, Age, disability, ethnicity, whatever. I don't care if you walk in there with Coke bottle glasses on and they're like, I know this person cannot see. They cannot say, are you blind? You do realize you need to be able to see to do this work, right? They cannot make those assumptions. Maybe you had a small accident and you just have to wear them for a little bit. Like they can't ask those questions. They they decided to interview you and they need to interview you with the assumption that you can do the work. I don't care if you walk in there looking 6 months pregnant. They don't know your situation. Maybe you just gained a little weight. They cannot say, are you pregnant? When are you due? They cannot ask those questions. If you walked in there with a cane, they can be like, how old is this person? Maybe you grade early. I know people that grade in their 20s. They can't be making the assumption, oh my God, how old is this person? Can they keep up? Now, if they have a really good HR department, and most HR departments have lawyers there, they know better. They know you better not ask any of these types of questions because they are illegal. If you are not going to give someone a job, it can't be because of any of the reasons there. Do not fall within the trap of having conversations that lead to information regarding any of this stuff about you. I do not care if the interviewer is on a natural high because they just came back from their honeymoon and they want to talk about their wedding and all of that. You let them talk, you congratulate them. Don't start saying, oh, yeah, I got married last week too, because you're trying to build rapport. You don't know how those people feel about that. They don't know you. Her boss could be mad that she got married, and now here you come saying you got married, and they're going to be thinking, oh, this person is never going to want to work any overtime because they just got married. They want to run home. You never know how people think. I don't care if the person just had a baby and he's all giddy over him having a baby. Don't start saying, "Oh yeah, I have a small child too." Keep your business to yourself because you don't want anybody judging you on anything personal, good or bad, right? Do not discuss any of your personal business because once you open the door, then you make it okay for them to ask questions and you never know how they're going to use that information. Does that make sense? I'm not saying that they're bad people. I'm just saying don't even put yourself in that situation. Keep your business to yourself. They want to know about your business, let them hire you first, right? Don't go down that rabbit hole because once you open up that door, then you've setting yourself up for, that conversation. So don't do that, right? All right. Now, are there questions that you should ask? Absolutely. But here's how you're going to do it. If once you do here's what you don't want to do. You don't ever want to let on that you have a problem one way or the other with anything that's happening in that interview. If you're doing your research, you may have a few questions that you want to know, and I'm going to tell you some to ask in a minute. But let's say you're doing your research on the company and you notice that the job description talked about, having to do some training in Tampa, but you're down in Fort Myers. And that may or may not be an issue for you, but you just want to verify, right? Or you see that they say they got a new project, but it's not exactly in Fort Myers, it's in Pensacola. And you're like, wait a minute, is this right? You just want to verify. So you want to ask, but you don't want to wait till the end. Don't ever save all your questions to the end because it could make the interviewer think you have an issue with something. And you don't want them to ever think, oh, I don't know if they're going to like the job because they were asking about this or that. So here's how you do it. When you guys are in the interview, right, after you say a little bit about yourself, they're going to talk a little bit about the company. This is where you sneak those questions in. Oh, let us tell you a little bit about the company. Yeah, we did this and we did that. And one of the reasons why we started this new project, because, the project is going to be, in Fort Myers, but we may have to do some training in Tampa. We were going to do it, but we're not sure. And then you can interject, oh, yeah, I was curious about that. I know I saw that on the job description. Now, you probably hated it, but you're just going to make it very casual because you want clarification. Or they could say, oh, yeah, we're going to do training, but it's only for 2 days. Oh, you're going to, oh, okay, just put that on your little notes, 2 days. You had a question about it. Don't let on that you have an issue with anything. All right. If it was overtime, not overtime or anything like that, that's the type of stuff I would try to squeeze out of the screener. But if you're there and they're talking about, yeah, we're really behind on the work, because we were down one man, that's why we can't wait to get you guys. You may squeeze it in. Oh, okay. So do y'all, do about 40, 50 hours a week? Maybe you want overtime, or maybe you can't do a lot of overtime, but you're just going to ask in a very nonchalant way. They do not need to know what your thoughts are, right? Because you don't want the person coming around behind you may hate it, may love it, and you don't want them comparing what you to them, right? So you're just going to keep your business to yourself. Oh, okay. So it's going to be a lot of overtime. Okay, just write that down. Don't say anything. You understand? But what can you say at the end when they say, okay, do you have any questions? Some common questions, very okay to say. Where are you in the hiring process? You need to know, am I the first person you guys are interviewing? Now I have to wait a whole month before you go through your list? Or am I the last person? And I know I should be able to hear a response next week. That will affect how aggressive you continue to be in your job search. A very, very fair question. If you are concerned, or if they bring up the fact that, oh yeah, we can't wait to get you on because we're a little bit behind. Oh, are you guys like working with 2 projects at once? Um, will we be working on one site? Is it on more than one site? That's very fair to ask. In my line of work, when I did consulting, I would ask, are there any major projects? For me, working in higher education, sometimes I would ask, do you guys have an audit coming up? I went to go work at one university and they had an audit 2 weeks, like the next day I started working there. I was preparing for an audit and they were so behind. I was getting home at like 10, 11 o'clock at night and working on the weekends for the first 2 months working at that school because they had a major audit and they just hired me in the middle of the audit. Oh my goodness, I was so mad. I had not prepared for that. So it's okay sometimes, depending upon the type of work that it is, to ask the question, are there any major things? Sometimes as corporate people will even ask, do we have any major things happening in the next 90 days, right? So those are all fair questions. When was the last time this position was filled? You need to know, are you walking into a nightmare, or are you walking into something where you have to wait because the project hasn't started? If it's a new project, is the project going to be underway in the next few weeks? Those are all fair questions to ask. Make sense? What should you not ask? Don't ever ask about money, guys. Here's why. Is you only ask about money after you leave. They are comparing your answers to everybody else's. They're going to go back and they're going to discuss. Most jobs have pay ranges 20 to 30, and they're going to discuss, oh yeah, I really like Cynthia, she gave good answers, blah 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 blah, she's worked on projects before. I think that she probably could be a really good project lead. I think we should offer her 25. They have to do that discussion, right? So they can't tell you how much they're going to pay you in the interview unless it's some entry level position and they're like, okay, listen, everybody's starting out at 20, we're hiring all 5 people at 20 bucks. Then most times it's a range, and of course, they're going to try to pay you, as low as possible because they don't want you starting out at 30 and then next year you're going to want more than what the range is. So they always try to start as low as possible, just so you know. But you're also going to go home and you're going to be like, man, let me compare what these people said the job is compared to what I saw on Indeed.com. Is it more than what you thought it was going to be? Is it less than what you thought it was going to be? Maybe you went in there thinking that I need to make at least 24 bucks an hour. And then you walked away saying, you know what? Oh, okay, it's not bad. I'll take 24, but if they offer me 23, it's okay. Or maybe it's more than what you thought. And you're like, no, I was thinking 24, but it needs to start at least 25. Well, they're going to have HR send you an offer letter. And the offer letter is going to say, oh, we're so happy to bring you on board. We really love talking to you. We want to start you at 25. Cha-ching, thank goodness. They were thinking the same thing I was thinking. But what happens if they say 23? Because they're trying to lowball you, but you feel like the job is worth 25. Now, I'm not going to tell you to negotiate when you first start. Please do not go and negotiate a job and say, Miss Taylor, then I lost the job because I tried to negotiate. But what I am telling you is as you get into your career, negotiations are expected. So typically what we do, if they say 23, I will negotiate and say, hey, but you guys got those 2 projects. And I know you were talking about, me potentially being a project lead, within the first 3 months. I was thinking 25 would be more appropriate. And that's what we do. We negotiate and then whatever, you get the job. That's how that process typically works. All right. So that's one of the main reasons why you don't really talk about money, because you need to go back and really think through what just happened. And then they need to go back and decide who they want to offer the position to and what they want to offer. Does that make sense? All right. Now, in the meantime, you can do your due diligence. You should always be doing research on what does an electrician in Fort Myers make at entry level. You can do research on that. What does an electrician make with 5 years in, 3 years in? And the internet will give you some indication of what you should be asking for in your area, because um, salaries are geographic. What people make in New Jersey as an electrician is totally different from what they make in Florida, right? So it's important for you to know what electricians make in Central Florida. Make sense? All right. So as you can see, this is why we need you guys to practice, right? Most of us do not go around thinking about behavioral questions, stress-related questions. We don't think about that kind of stuff, and that's why we want you guys to practice. So hopefully you know now why we want you to practice. Practice makes perfect. You're only going to have to do it one time next week, but it makes you more comfortable. Let me ask you guys, do you feel a little bit more comfortable now understanding how the interview questions work? Maybe you already knew. I don't know, but does that help? Was that helpful? Right? And the main thing is too, thanks guys, it's just so you can, nobody likes to talk to strangers. That is totally normal. I don't care how old you are. I've applied, I've worked for so many companies I can't count, and I still hate the interviewing process. I absolutely hate it. Right? Nobody likes talking to strangers about themselves. So it's totally normal to be nervous about that, right? So that's why, practicing, getting good night's rest, and all those things. All right, guys, here's your live conference question for today. I want you to name 3 things you are looking for in a company. Now, this should be easy because if you've done your long-term goal, it should have something to do with your long-term goal. Hint, hint, something to do with your long-term goal. 3 things you're looking for in a company. You want to become a master electrician. You want to work at a large company. What are the 3 things you're looking for? Please don't say money, because you're not volunteering, so we know that, right? 3 things you're looking for in a company. That's your conference question for today. Please, I mean, I don't have to tell you guys this because you guys are awesome. Tomorrow, technically, is your midterm, but the midterm is open. It's been open. It will stay open until Sunday. My friends, we will not be on the live session for more than 5 or 10 minutes tomorrow. Please come early. I am giving you that time to go and do your midterm. It is open book. It is not timed. I want to give people time to do that. You don't come to a class and have class and do a test. So we're going to give you your time to do that test. We will talk a little bit. I'll give you your live conference question, and then I will release you. If you come here and we're gone, just go straight to the video and get your live conference question. All right? So don't say, oh, did they have a live session? We had one, but we left. I have like 60 students in my other class. There's only a few of you guys, so there's no way we're going to be over here longer than a few minutes, right? So make sure that you come quick. Go ahead, Isaac.
Quick question, before you go, the second assignment when it talks about pick a person to do an interview, like a
Yes.
name, which is the only thing we're supposed to do today, correct? Just put the name.
Absolutely, Isaac. Thanks for asking. Yes.
Okay.
So this is one of those, we want you to start talking to people about your long-term goal. You're going to start networking a little bit. We're going to be talking about networking next week. But we want you to do it with somebody that you know. It doesn't have to be, we just want you to start talking to them to get information. Hey, it could be your uncle, a cousin, it could be your spouse, your husband, boyfriend, girlfriend, I don't care who it is. Anybody that has any type of leadership role. And just say, hey, I want to pick your brain for a little bit. Here's my long-term goal. I just want to get your feedback. What is it like, especially if you want to own your own business? What is it like, being in charge, having management, managing budgets, having to hire people? Whatever question you want to ask. I threw some questions in there. You don't have to ask those. You don't have to talk to them today. I just want to know who it is you would want to talk to. And then you have until next week to actually talk to them and tell me how it went. And it
Okay,
can be over
perfect.
the
So,
phone. It doesn't have to be, in person or anything like that.
oh, so next week we're gonna interview this person like
Yeah,
live.
between today and next week. Some people might interview them tomorrow, Sunday, Saturday, whenever you do it, and then next week, next Wednesday, I think you turn it. You tell me what happened.
Oh, well, yeah, I will tell you what happened by writing, like typing it.
Yeah,
Okay,
you'll give me a
got it.
debrief on the questions you asked and how they answered them. You'll see it in the assignment. On Monday, if you want to like go to that assignment, I think it's on Wednesday. You can see what questions you'll have to answer regarding that.
Oh, okay. So you'll specify how many questions and all that. Okay, got it.
Yeah, you don't. There's no specific number of questions. It's really just just read the assignment today. It kind of tells you. It's really
Yep.
geared towards what it is you want to know. Everybody wants to know something different.
Okay, got it.
That's a great question. Thank you for reminding me to talk about that.
No problem.
All right, my friends, have a great evening, and I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.
Thank
Bye
you. Have
bye.
a good evening.
You too.